Buenos Aires goes quiet for exactly 4 seconds. That's how long it takes a video assistant referee sitting in a room you'll never see, reviewing angles you'll never get to argue with, to end a World Cup quarterfinal for a guy who never touched anybody. Extra time, Switzerland just tied it. The stadium is screaming, genuinely screaming, the kind of noise that makes broadcasters raise their voice mid-sentence because for about 90 seconds, the upset feels alive. Then the referee's arm goes up. A card comes out. But it's not for the play everybody in that stadium just watched. It's for something else entirely. Something a review room decided 30 seconds later about a player who never touched anybody. And here's what everybody watching at home is already thinking, because you're thinking it too. This whole thing is stacked. It's rigged. The 4 best teams are the Final 4. It feels too convenient to be real. The exact 4 flags you'd have circled in a preseason bracket sitting there in the semifinal like somebody wrote the script in advance. Maybe they did. But somebody definitely fixed a card, and that's the part of the story that people are talking about. Welcome back to Eyes Wide. All right, I'm Craig Palmer, and if you are new here, good. I'm glad you found us. You picked a hell of an episode to start with. And if you've been riding with me for a while, you know the drill, but stick around anyway, because I don't think you've heard this version of the story yet, especially the part that happened to me. Here's what we like to do here. We take something that the whole world's already watching and show you the things underneath that's actually going to change how you operate Monday morning. That's it. That's the whole show. If you're in, please go ahead and hit subscribe. You can find us at eyeswidecp.com/podcast. And when this one's over, send it to someone who needs to hear it. This thing grows one person at a time, and that person's usually you, deciding somebody else needs to hear it. Now, let's get back to that stadium, because what happened next isn't really about soccer, but I think you already know that. Let's get into it. Now, this isn't just about a bad call. It's about what you do with the minutes you didn't choose to lose. Now, here's what most people don't know about a red card unless you've actually played soccer. It doesn't just end on that day. It doesn't just end your day. It suspends you from the next match. And Americans got a feel for this year because Balogun got a red card, and the whole thing was about whether or not he's going to be able to play in the next game against Belgium, which he did. But it still didn't matter because they all got their ass kicked, and I'm not going to spend my time on this podcast talking about that. We actually discussed what happened to the U.S. team in an earlier episode. I think it was around episode 20. And basically it's about when the moment gets too big for you, or if you're not ready for the moment. I think it had something to do with what the clock kind of shows. You've got people that step up, and you got people that wilt. And the U.S. did not step up. The U.S. wilted. But again, I digress. That is not what this episode is about. So back to the red card, though, because the topic of a red card has been very topical with this World Cup, with the World Cup 2026. But as everyone knows or has gotten to know this year, it doesn't just end your day. It suspends you for at least the next match. Now, sometimes it suspends you for the next 2, sometimes 3, depending on what the panel decides after the fact. You see, the punishment doesn't end when the referee blows the whistle. It follows you into games you have not played yet. You see, that's the part that everyone misses when they talk about catching a bad break in life or at work. The cost isn't the day you got blamed. It's every day after that you're locked out of the room, whatever room you need to be in. And if you've ever been the fall guy in a reorg, or lost a role after a bad quarter that wasn't on you, got cut from a project because somebody upstairs needed to put a name in the postmortem, or watch somebody else get the credit for what you built, this one is for you. Sales leaders under board pressure, reps who had to eat a territory call they did not make, anybody who got sidelined by a decision they did not make and can't appeal. Eyes wide audience, this one's for you. Now let me set the scene. It's the World Cup quarterfinal, Argentina and Switzerland. You likely saw the game. Extra time, Switzerland's forward Breel Embolo is on a pitch fighting for his life, literally fighting for his country's chance to keep playing in the biggest tournament on earth. Argentina's Leandro Paredes goes in on a challenge. Ref sees it, cards Paredes, standard call. Then VAR steps in, reviews the footage, and flips it. Not just reverses the card, flips who it goes to. It turns out that Embolo was already falling before Paredes made contact. But this is real time. This is a fast-moving sport. How can you possibly put something in slow motion and then make judgment to it? Now, in real time, the referee gave Paredes the yellow card. So I get the idea of going to VAR to ensure that Paredes actually made a foul, that he did something that warranted getting a warning and getting issued a yellow card. Because as we've discussed, yellow cards and red cards mean a lot in soccer. 2 yellow cards and you're out. 2 yellow cards, you get a red card, you're out for the next game too. And so I get it. Bringing in VAR to make sure that Paredes definitely did something considered illegal, fine. But in this instant, it wasn't just about that. And I heard Landon Donovan trying to discuss this on the call and really ask the questions of what needs to take place. And it seems like this is what has to happen. Since a yellow card was issued for a foul, if they're not going to give the yellow card, there was not indeed a foul by the person that they originally issued the yellow card to, then in fact, there must be a yellow card, a foul by the person that simulated the contact. But this is ludicrous. Embolo gets his second yellow card, which equals a red card, and he is out. Not for the foul. He didn't commit one. For mistaken identity, a rule that exists specifically because the system sometimes cards the wrong guy, and there's a process to fix it. So a yellow card was given, and the yellow card has to go to somebody. So in this case, fixing it meant ejecting somebody who did nothing wrong. Swiss defender Nico Elvedi said it best after the match. I just don't understand how VAR can make that kind of a decision. Now here's what I want you to sit with. The system worked exactly as designed, and the outcome was still unjust. That's the part that should scare you a little. It's not always a broken process that gets you. Sometimes it's a process working perfectly, and you're just the guy standing in the wrong spot when it lands. I know what that feels like, not on a soccer pitch, but in real life, in a sales territory. Years ago, when I was a Pacer rep, I had a customer, an electrophysiologist out in Southern California, who was without question my best relationship in the business. I knew her family. We traveled to meetings together. I helped her build her career, and she helped build mine. That's not a client relationship. That's a partnership built over years. And then things started going bad with the company I was with, and I needed to make a change. I was talking to a rep at a company I was considering going to, and because I trusted him, I told him that I had a bunch of cases on the books with this surgeon. I resigned from the company I was having problems with, and even before I made the move official to move to the new organization, that rep took it upon himself to show up to her cases and tell her the cases were his now, that I said so. I never said that. She called me that same day, completely furious, told me that I had no right to shift her cases to somebody else. And she's right. I had no right to do that. I would never do that. I tried to explain to her that I didn't do that. I didn't authorize that it wasn't me. But it didn't matter. I moved to the new company, and I never worked with that surgeon again. I had to build a new territory with new relationships, and here I was supposed to be making a very seamless move, just changing the jersey I was playing for, but instead, I had to start all over again. I had to go build a new territory from scratch because she'd already decided who I was based on something I did not do. That's a red card. And here's where it's worse than what happened to Embolo. His suspension has an end date, or it would have had an end date should they have gone on. FIFA tells you exactly how many games you're out. Mine didn't. Business doesn't hand you a schedule for when you're allowed back in. Sometimes there isn't one. A lot of people experience setbacks, and unfortunately, they never fully make it back to where they once were or where they want to get to. And here's the pattern underneath both of these stories, whether it's a referee's booth or a boardroom. Systems and people reach for the simplest explanation, not the true one. It was simpler for that surgeon to believe the guy standing in front of her telling her the cases were his than to track me down and ask before she made up her mind. Blame goes to whomever is closest and easiest, not whoever is actually responsible. If you've ever wondered why you took the hit for something that wasn't your call, that's usually why. Not malice. Convenience. Now, Switzerland didn't get to stop playing because the call was unfair. They finished the match a man down, still fighting, still trying to close a gap that got harder the second Embolo walked off. And I didn't get to stop working because a relationship blew up over something I didn't do. I still had a new company to prove myself at. I still had a new territory to build. I didn't get to spend the next 6 months explaining myself to anybody who'd listen. Nobody was owed my side of the story. I owed myself the work. And this is the part that people skip. A lot of people skip this because it's just not satisfying. When you get an unjust red card, your instinct is to fight the call. You want to argue the tape. You want to get somebody to admit that you were right. And sometimes that works, but a lot of the time it does not. And the longer you stay in that fight, the longer you're not doing the thing that actually gets you back on the field, which is playing the game in front of you. Protect your name. Keep producing. Stay visible for the right reasons, not because you're trying to relitigate what happened, but because that's the only thing that was ever actually in your control. And here's the hard truth. I'm not going to soften it because you didn't come here for soft. You don't always get reinstated. You don't. Even when you're innocent, even when the facts eventually come out. I never got that surgeon back. I never worked with her again. All these years later, I still think about her. I still think about what we built before that day, and no amount of being right about what actually happened changed that outcome. If you're waiting for the moment where everybody realizes that they were wrong about you and hands you back what you lost, stop waiting. That moment does not always come, and building your whole recovery around it is how people stay stuck for years, waiting on an apology that isn't coming from people who've already made up their mind about you. The measure of you isn't whether you get the vindication. It's what you build next while you're still waiting on the people who may never come around. I built a new territory. I built a new set of relationships. That surgeon is still out there somewhere, still believing something about me that is not true. I can't control that. I can only control whether I let it stop me from building the next thing. If I stopped it from me becoming what I was supposed to become, that is the whole game. Not prove them wrong. Build anyway. All right, this one's moving along pretty fast, so I promise you I'm not going to take up too much more of your time. But here's the question that I want to leave you with. Who's out there right now serving a suspension for a card they didn't deserve? And what are you doing with the games that you're missing? Are you spending that time trying to get somebody to admit that they were wrong? Or are you building the next territory, the next relationship, the next version of yourself that doesn't need their permission to get back on the field? And here's what I want you to actually take with you. You don't control the call. You never did. What you control is what you build while everybody else is still arguing about whether the call was fair. That's it. That's the whole edge. Not being right, but being relentless. All right, if this one hit you somewhere, please do me a favor and send it to the person you know who's still waiting on an apology that isn't coming. They need to hear this today, not someday, today. And I'm going to go ahead and close this one the way I close every single episode, reminding each and every one of you that are still listening that this life is what you make of it. The future you is waiting patiently to meet the current you. Continue to work to find your tomorrow in today and keep the promises you make to yourself. Until we meet again, eyes wide, see everything. Goodbye.